Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Developing a Study Plan for Finals, hosted by Georgetown's Academic Resource Center. It's nice to have you with us today.
I'm Betsy Malarczyk. I'm a Learning Skills Specialist at the Academic Resource Center.
And I'm Carolyn Friedman. I am the Disability and Learning Skills Advisor for the ARC at the School of Continuing Studies. So I just want to take a moment to let you know that you can feel free to ask any questions you might have in the chat at any time during our presentation. We're also going to leave a little bit of a time for you to work at the end of the webinar, which is also a great time for you to ask any questions that you might have. So feel free to stick them there in the chat. But where to start when you think about studying for finals? And the key is going to be early planning. So the first thing to think about is, when are your finals? And you want to use your syllabi and Canvas, all of those options available to you to figure out when your finals are and where they're located, just to confirm. And remember that exam times are based on the registrar's exam schedule. So you'll want to check and follow that link to make sure you're finding not only the right location, but also the right time. And I'm just going to go ahead and stick that in the chat really quickly. If I can get it to work here. There is the link to the final exam room assignments. Let me see if I can link to the exam schedule. It looked like it was being funky on my end really quickly. Okay. And then that second link is the link to the actual schedule, where you can find when your classes will be testing for final exams. So definitely check out those two links before you start planning.
So one essential component that you need in developing a study plan for finals is some kind of calendar. And I think probably every webinar that Carol and I have done, we've mentioned having a calendar or planner. But it's just so important to help you actually come up with a concrete plan. Writing your plan down or typing it and saving it in concrete blocks is what's going to help you visualize and actually plan out your steps. So you can use a digital planner or paper, whichever works better for you. If you have a system, go with that. Here are a few of our favorites. So one is the weekly schedule planner that we have on the ARC website. And I'm just going to show you our website really quickly. So we have online a whole bunch of free resources that are essentially PDFs that are free for anyone to download. We're updating them throughout the year. So under time management, our second one here, the weekly schedule planner, is going to be really helpful resource for this, and it comes right on up. The second page here is just a very straightforward, simple printout. You can copy paste this and work with it digitally. You can print it out and work with it pen and paper, but it's a really easy resource to use. And then the first page is just kind of some tips on scheduling for a non-exam period of time in terms of how to prioritize. So this is one that is really helpful to use. And again, on the ARC website, we have all kinds of resources that are available for you, including some related to studying. Another great resource, if you like print resources, are Passion Planner's free digital downloads. So Passion Planner is, when I first heard about this website, I was told it's a planner company that has free downloads. And I was like, great, they have samples. No, what I didn't realize is they have whole planners that you can download. So this is a 100-page document. It breaks it down into hourly, daily, so you can really come up with a developed schedule just using this resource. You have to give them your email address and then you get all kinds of promotional offers, but in return, you can download a free planner. And this page right here, page 33, is the one I've been printing out a lot. Often when I say often, but specifically in the last week when I've been talking with students about planning out final exams and they say they don't know where to start, what I do is I go and print out just this page and we start by just writing down all of their final exam dates. And it helps as a starting point. It also helps you visualize when everything is happening, because it's so easy to get it all kind of jumbled up when it's just in your head. Writing it down again is a really good starting point to coming up with a solid plan. And then the last one is Google Calendar. This is what we're going to be working with in today's session. Google Calendar is, again, a free resource that is very easy to customize, which is why we work with it. And then it's also an important part of our lives here at Georgetown. It's already heavily integrated in our day-to-day. So this is what we're going to be working with today.
Muted, sorry about that. Thanks, Betsy. Next, it's going to be important to think about how do we actually sit down and create a study cycle. And creating a study cycle consists of two parts. It consists of a period of preparation and a period of review. What is preparation? Preparation is really identifying and preparing all the ways that you're planning to review the material later on. So it's kind of like a pre-prep phase. You're developing study guides, for instance. Maybe you're making flashcards, considering what topics might be on an exam. And this is certainly tailored to the content too. Maybe you'll make flashcards for a science course you're in, maybe not necessarily for a math course or something like that. So you can definitely take everything you know about the content and kind of decide what will be appropriate, what's the most appropriate mode of preparation. And then what is review? Review is actually using those preparation strategies to see if you know your material. So you're taking what you've done in the prep phase, putting it all together, and moving forward. So maybe you're quizzing yourself using your flashcards. Maybe you're reciting your list of topics, and maybe you're taking practice tests, mimicking those test conditions. So to create a 5-day study cycle, we really want to think about 5 days ahead of an exam. Look at that, shocking. The goal would be to plan 2 to 3 hour-long chunks each day dedicated to both preparation and review. And the reason we want to do a little bit of both in that time is so that we can keep our brain fresh. If you just sit there and do review over and over during a given day, it's going to tire your mind. So if you can sprinkle in a little bit of preparation with a little bit of review in each study session, your brain is going to be a little bit more flexible and it's going to make things easier on you. So by the exam day, you're going to be really, really well prepared because you will have had that prep period, those review periods, and you get a lot of good chunks in there. But I do want to note that some students do better with a longer study cycle. So it's a good idea to experiment and really see what works best for you. Are you good with 5 days? Maybe you try 5 days for this term, but in the spring, try 7 and see how that feels and just get a sense of what works and what makes sense. Okay, so now we're going to look at planning study blocks for multiple exams. So we're actually starting here with our basic calendar and filling in from there. So you can see this might be an example calendar schedule that I've set. Here's what my calendar looks like now with just my tests and papers entered in. But I'll want to go through now and add study blocks so I'm not studying aimlessly when I sit down to work. That's the worst thing you can do, right, is studying aimlessly. We want to make sure we have a goal in mind. But for efficiency's sake, I have decided just to take some screenshots of my calendar now so that you can see me map out the study cycle, but we're not spending a lot of time putting events in the Google Calendar. So looking ahead in my calendar now, I see I've got those 2 tests on the same day. So right now, I'm going to work through studying for my 2 tests on Thursday the 10th. And it looks like I have a sociology final at 12:30 on Friday and a Calc 2 final at 4 p.m. So I'm going to plan to make blocks for both parts of the study cycle. You can see that I also added in blue there. Those are task notes to myself on the day of my finals. So I'd actually remember to eat lunch and to eat a snack and to drink water. These are sometimes not things we think too much about on finals days, but are super, super important. And the last day of classes this semester is on Monday, December 6th. So it makes sense to plan my study cycle starting on that preceding weekend. I'm going to plan to start on Monday to make it a true 5-day study cycle and to make it easier so that we can see all of that study cycle in one shot on the calendar, but you can certainly adjust to 6 days or 7 days if you like. In my mind, it's not realistic or sustainable to plan every second of your day studying for these 2 tests because we've also got a paper we need to write. If you look at Saturday the 11th in that magenta block there, we have Problem of God final exam. Our paper is due that morning. So we have a paper we need to write, but also we have a life we need to live. One goal of mine might be to not emerge from the final exam period feeling like a complete zombie. So we can hop ahead. Okay, so again, this is my basic calendar, and I realized when I was making this slide that I'm actually missing my Monday classes. So I need to add those in. And we want to think about staying 5 to 7 days ahead of an exam, like I mentioned before. And we also want to keep in mind that preparation and review for each class. Okay, so here, now I've added my last day of classes in red for my class schedule. So you can see Monday, I've marked it as the last day of classes. I've got my 3 courses listed. And then on Friday and Saturday, I've also marked in when my final exams will take place. And you can see in green, that's going to be my calendar for my study time. And so I also decided to add in a preparation block for each of my 2 upcoming exams, sociology and calculus. Now, if I were to click on this preparation block for sociology, for example, the description would say to make a study guide and create flashcards of important terms. But since we can't click on it, nothing would come up. And for the calc prep block at 2 p.m., the description says to make a study guide, review notes, and note anytime I maybe had a mistake or a miss on a past test. So that's all part of the preparation phase of the study cycle. Okay, so now we're going to fill in the study cycle blocks based on our prep work. So between Problem of God and Spanish, I've added a chunk of review on Monday at 10 a.m. to review chapters 1 through 4 in my sociology notes. And then a little bit of a break. You'll see I even marked it in that green little block, break, and then a review of calculus notes, chapters 1 through 4. For the break, I did schedule it in there so that I would remember to actually take a break. When I was in school, one of my biggest problems was that I would become so hyper-focused on my studying that I would not take breaks, and it really worked against me. So try to schedule in your breaks as much as possible. Yeah, sometimes we can get so in that zone that we're not taking breaks, we're not taking care of ourselves, maybe we're not eating or drinking. And even switching gears out of studying will really help your brain to refocus because you've given it that break and that time to decompress a little bit, and it can be very helpful. After Spanish, I've decided to block out 30 minutes to review my sociology flashcards. And then I've also blocked out an hour before dinner to review maybe past calculus tests, for example. So now it might be helpful to think about what you want to accomplish right before the exam period and actually work backwards when you're creating your study cycle. So here I've included blocks for taking a practice test for each exam because I really want to be able to give myself a practice test to gauge my progress. 12:30 to 1:30 will be my sociology practice test. That's on Thursday. And then I'll give myself a break and time to eat lunch, of course. And then I'll want to take about an hour to review that test and how that practice test went before moving on to calculus. I've blocked my calculus practice test from 4 to 5, and then time to review how I did immediately after, another quick 15-minute break. One thing you may notice is that I've blocked my practice tests at the same time as my real finals will take place the next day, so that I can try to mimic as much as possible those real life testing conditions. Now we can fill in the rest of our study cycle because we know where we'd like to be on our last study day, which is taking and reviewing those practice tests. So in order to prepare for my practice test though, I love taking what I've learned and condensing the most important information into a one-page study guide that I like to call a one-pager. So on Wednesday, I've ended up blocking out 2 hours to create my condensed study guide for each class, sociology at 11 and calculus at 2. I also added in a one-pager review on Thursday at 10 a.m. before I take my practice tests. The goal of the one-pager is also to be able to review it right before you enter your test so that you feel really well prepared with the important information fresh on your mind. And then all we have left to do to fill in for the study cycle is Tuesday. Okay, so my first block is a notes review for sociology, and I just made a note to myself that I want to review chapters 4 through 8 first, with a break, and then a review of my sociology study guide. After another break, I added a block of time for me to generate my own test questions, which I'm going to use for my practice test on Thursday. Remember, if you're going to create a practice test for yourself, you have to create those questions ahead of time, and Tuesday was a great time to be able to do that. And then for my calculus block, I used the same pattern of a notes review and then a review of the study guide and writing practice questions, making sure to fit 15-minute breaks in between each of those study chunks. I think this is also a good place to note that you can do what works best for you as far as structuring your study cycle is concerned. I like to study for one class in a big chunk and then the next class after that chunk, but you may find you want to start with Soci and then switch to Calc. Maybe you want to start with Calc and switch to Soci. Maybe you start with something that you find easier and do the harder thing after. You may be the type of person who wants to get the harder thing out of the way and do the easier thing later. Whatever works best for you is the way to do it. My advice, again, is to just experiment and find whatever method works best for you. So the next little thing to add to our study cycle is just 2 more blocks on Wednesday to review the one-pagers that we just made. I wanted to make sure not to forget that part. We want to make the one-pager, but then also take some time before our test to review it. And then lastly, we want to do one quick one-pager review on the day of the exam. So you can see I added 2 tiny green blocks on Friday the 10th, right before my Soci exam and right before my Calc exam. That's just a reminder to review those one-pagers, to take them with me before I head into my exam so that I can take a quick look and be ready to go. So you can see that there's a lot to this study cycle, but it's chunked nicely and it gives you the evenings free to work on other finals that may be essay-based, like Problem of God, which Betsy is going to talk about in just a minute.
Thank you so much for all of that, Carolyn. So as Carolyn mentioned, we also have this essay due on Saturday. So just to give you some context for this hypothetical assignment, it's a Problem of God, which is a theology course essay due Saturday at 9 a.m. The expectation is that it's 5 pages double spaced, and it needs textual support from 2 to 4 in-class sources. So it doesn't require any outside research, but it does require me working with materials and readings from the course and including quotations. So how am I going to start this assignment? First, what I'm going to do is break down the paper writing steps that I need to accomplish. Breaking down the writing process into different steps is essentially like coming up with my to-do list for writing a paper. Breaking the paper into smaller steps will help me spread the process out over a longer period of time and will make it a lot easier to add paper writing to my already ambitious study schedule. And then planning intentional study goals will also help me to avoid procrastination because I can just focus on one step at a time instead of thinking about the assignment as a whole. So going over the paper writing steps, your steps might look a little different based on the assignment or based on your writing process, but this is typically how I would approach an assignment like this. The first step for me would be reading the assignment. Students don't always think of that as part of the paper writing process, but I want to make sure I spend time with the assignment to understand what it is that I need to do, to make sure I haven't missed anything important, double check the deadline, double check the source requirement, page requirement. But I'm really going to focus on the main question that the assignment is asking me, and making sure I understand all of the sub-questions within that I need to address. After that is going to be brainstorming. This is sort of where I think about the assignment and try to generate ideas. I might free write, I might flip through notes, I might flip through readings from the semester and look at notes that I've taken in the past. But this is me really thinking about what can I work on, not necessarily in the specifics of argument and thesis yet, more just topic-wise. What can I do for this assignment? Then after that is researching or looking through sources. It's important to note that the steps for this paper writing process are incredibly fluid. So it's not like one step is completely isolated from the next step. In particular for brainstorming, if I feel like I know what source I want to work with, but I don't know specifically how, then looking through the sources, I might be looking for quotes or specific passages to use in my paper, but I might also still be generating ideas. This step also is going to intersect with the next one, which is developing a thesis. As I'm looking through sources and figuring out what quotes I want to use, then I may also be formulating my argument, which is going to help me develop a strong thesis and help me get a clear idea of what my paper's focus will be. After that comes outlining. Outlining might look different for everyone. Some folks just like a quick bullet point outline so that they know like this is the main idea for each paragraph. Other folks might be more in depth and figure out which source am I going to use for each point, which paragraph is going to focus on which source. So really outlining can be a faster process or a slower process depending on your style. Then drafting. Drafting is essentially writing the paper. I call it drafting here because taking the pressure of the final product off of the writing process can really make writing go a lot easier. I will write more quickly knowing that the draft stage is not the final stage, because after that I have revising. The revision process is when I look at my essay and I look for big picture problems. So where do I not support an argument? Where do I not explain a source sufficiently? This is looking for holes in the argument of your essay, as well as the development of the paper. So it's kind of reading over your essay and looking for more major problems that may need more time and consideration to alter. And then my final step is going to be proofreading. Proofreading is more of a language cursory check. I'm looking through for spelling errors, for grammar errors. I'm going to check my style guide. Is my assignment in MLA format? Do my margins look good? Do I have correct, proper citations? So proofreading is more of that last minute check. And then the final step would be to submit it. So this is the calendar that Carolyn developed. And this is what I am starting with when I sit down to come up with my paper writing schedule. So my initial reaction might be to have a quick freak out, but then I'm going to take a deep breath and remember that I planned for this essay. I left my evenings free. I actually have a fair amount of time to work on this. So I'm going to start by thinking about this week in a big picture sense. So which steps can I do on which days? I think the first thing I start with here is actually looking at that Thursday, Friday. Friday, I have these exams, and I know that Thursday, I want to focus on the exams. I don't want to schedule significant writing for that day because I don't want to be distracted from something that's really important for exam preparation, which is sleeping. And I don't want to be stressing about my essay on this day. So Thursday, I'm going to try to avoid doing any writing on, which means that I really have to have the essay finished before Thursday. That means I need to revise on Wednesday, and that means Monday and Tuesday are going to be my major writing days. So I'm glad that I looked at this schedule to know that I looked at the week ahead of time to know that, because I think my instinct with an essay due Saturday is to work on it on Wednesday. But if I really think about the steps, I need to have most of my draft done on Tuesday. This means that by the end of Sunday, I need to have an outline done. If I have more time, maybe I would try to spread out the earlier steps, but because I have such a busy week, I'm going to do a lot of the brainstorming and the early steps on Sunday. So let's start with Sunday. The first step here is reading the assignment. And as I mentioned before, steps for writing a paper are quite fluid. So I'm going to, after the sociology prep block, I'm going to spend 30 minutes reading the assignment and brainstorming. I think that that's something I can do after a long, prep block and not be too burnt out with that. And then after that, I'm going to go for a walk. And I scheduled a walk as an intentional break for two reasons. One is because I know I want to take a break, but I want to make sure that I take a break in an intentional way. I'm worried that after like a long, big block of time of studying and then working on this assignment, I might just scroll on my phone. Turn on Netflix, turn on YouTube, and that can be really dangerous. So if I go for a walk, it's kind of an intentional activity that's going to help me feel invigorated. But by doing this after the brainstorming process, I might also use this walk as an opportunity to think a little bit about what I want to work on. So I can kind of mull over the ideas that I came up with during my brainstorming session in a more abstract way. After that, I've left some time for lunch. And then I'm going to sit down for an hour and try to select my sources and develop my thesis. So this is a period when I'm going to be looking through some of these texts that I might use, look for quotes, and go back and forth between that to try to come up with a cursory thesis. It might not be solid at this point, but I want to make sure that I'm spreading out these early steps because idea development takes time. Sometimes you're thinking about these things in the back of your head, even if you're not working on it actively. So I don't want to schedule brainstorming, look through sources, thesis, outline back to back to back, because that doesn't give me time to think about my ideas. And that's why I'm spreading it out in these little chunks throughout the day. If I have time on Saturday, ideally I would read the assignment and brainstorm on that day and maybe select sources and develop the thesis that day. This part, it's easier if you can spread it out longer because you can really think about things. But Saturday is busy, it's not an option. So instead, I'm spreading this process out throughout the day. Then I'm doing my calculus prep block. After that, I am taking a break. I know myself. I know that this is the day when I'm going to want to go to the grocery store. I need to do some laundry. I need to take care of some things before this very busy week. So I've intentionally left a little bit of time on this day. But then I'm coming out of that block of time with dinner, and I scheduled dinner for two reasons. One is to make sure that I am eating dinner. As Carolyn mentioned, it's really easy to let go of your personal habits and not take care of yourself during this week when it's actually more important than ever, because the only way you can maintain such an ambitious schedule is by making sure you're eating properly and sleeping properly. I've also scheduled dinner here because I think it's an easy way to come out of my break. I'm worried that I'm going to be having this fabulous break where I go to the grocery store and do laundry and live my best life and not want to sit down and work on my essay outline. So dinner is kind of an interesting bridge. It's something productive, it's scheduled, but it's still kind of relaxing. And it's going to be easier for me to go from dinner to working on my outline than it will be from doing something else that's more break-like into working on my outline. So then in the evening, I have solidifying my thesis and outlining my essay. I have this planned here because I really need to get this done, this outline done by the end of the night in order to sustain the writing schedule that I have envisioned. So I guess a good follow-up question to that is, when am I going to bed? How long do I have before the end of the night for this outline? So I was just talking about how important it is to maintain a good eating schedule, a good sleep schedule, to kind of make sure you're taking care of yourself. And this is always important. I know it's something that you hear a lot as students, and it's difficult to make reality. But again, the truth is that, especially if you're a student who has 2 exams at the end of the week, you need a good night's sleep in order to process that information. You should really think of getting sleep before an exam as part of your study process, because that is when the information is going to synthesize and you will know it better for having gotten a good night's sleep. So I'm making the decision to try to get ready for bed at 10:30 every night and be in bed by 11. I'm going to try my best to stick to this schedule. But having that end point is also going to help me avoid staying up till 2 in the morning, because it gives me a personal deadline. So even if I don't finish outlining this essay by 9:30, if I haven't finished it by 10:30, then I got to go to bed. And I've hopefully built enough wiggle room into my writing schedule that it's okay if I stop there and go to bed, but I want to try to avoid going past this 11 p.m. bedtime as much as possible. So one way that I think I can stay on track with this bedtime is by also adding a regular dinner time. I think adding this dinner from most nights 6 to 7, with the exception of the practice test day, is going to accomplish 2 things. One, it's going to create a pretty solid buffer between these intense study blocks and kind of these evening sessions, which for me, I have a harder time working in the evening. So it makes sure I have a break in there so I don't totally burn out. I have at least an hour to take care of myself and to relax a little bit. But having dinner from 6 to 7 is also going to help me stay on track with that 11 p.m. bedtime, because I'm not going to be suddenly at 9 p.m. realizing I haven't eaten, and then I need to make food happen, and then I order something and then it comes late, et cetera, et cetera. So having the dinner plan is going to allow me to use my evenings in a more effective way and to plan better. So next, what I've added is the writing process, which this is difficult to guess and to figure out how long I'm going to spend on each amount of the essay. So I've done the best I can to guess how long I will take based on past experience. How long does it take me to work on an essay for Problem of God last month, the month before? So what I actually did first here in adding writing to my schedule is at the last part of writing first, and that is Wednesday morning. I added my introduction, my conclusion, and my works cited first thing in the morning. Writing tip that I think makes writing an essay a lot easier is to write the introduction last, because the introduction is supposed to introduce this paper and the main ideas. And sometimes it can be a hard place to start writing because you haven't written the paper yet, so you don't know what you're introducing. And the introduction and conclusion, they kind of go together because they're both capturing the big picture, but different elements of it. So I'm having a separate section to do the introduction, conclusion, and to work on my works cited. I'm going to do that in the morning so that hopefully I don't spend too much time on it. So for me, knowing how I write, that's about a page estimated for my 5-page essay, the intro and conclusion. So that means that I'm really focusing on 4-ish pages for the body of my essay. So I know that I need to work on that Monday and Tuesday evening. So I am going to try to do the first and second pages about half of the essay on Monday, and then the second half of the body paragraphs on Tuesday evening. I've broken this down into first page, second page, and then third page, fourth page. Not because that's how I write, but because I want to break up this big chunk of writing into smaller goals so that it's easier for me to stay on task. I worry if I just say I'm going to write this essay from 7 to 10:30, that it's going to be easier for me to procrastinate. And sometimes making smaller goals, saying I need to have about my first page finished within this first hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes, is going to give me a goal to work towards that'll help me stay on task. It also helps me come up with a good way to add in a little break there as well, so that I am, not getting totally burned out during this time. I toyed with putting in a 30-minute break in between these pages instead of a 15-minute break, but I think for me, as someone who gets easily distracted, 30 minutes is too long. I will walk away, I will not want to come back. So that's why instead I have that big chunk of time before dinner. I'd rather take that one long break here and then just try to stay in the paper zone, but with a break to drink water, to walk around, to move, and to just check in and make sure I'm staying on task. So then I'm adding the revision process. I know that I want to have this essay for the most part done by Wednesday evening so that Thursday can be completely focused on the test prep. So with that in mind, after I finish my calc review on Wednesday, I'm going to take a quick break before I jump into revision. Then I'm going to read over my paper and make revision notes. Basically, I'm figuring out what I need to do with my revision block, because again, coming up with a plan first makes it so much easier to execute, especially since I have a limited amount of time in which to revise my paper. Then sticking with my regular dinner, and then after that, I'm revising my paper. Hopefully I have a more specific plan for each block. And I am, again, taking a quick 15-minute break in between those two blocks. So that means that my final step for the essay writing process is to proofread. And I've added that Friday after these exams, they're done. I like having a little bit of time in between having written the paper and proofreading, because seeing it after you have written it, giving that time allows you to see errors more clearly. Sometimes we don't even see errors and mistakes because we know what it's supposed to say. So we see the idea in our mind instead of seeing the actual words. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I have time there if I need it, which is nice. That's that buffer I was talking about at the beginning. If there's something really major I forgot to put in a source, my printer is not working if I need to turn it in person, I have time to fix things. But basically, I'm just going to read through, look for errors, look for any major mistakes. A really good tip for proofreading is to read it out loud. That's a good tip for revision as well, because sometimes when we're reading out loud, we, again, see mistakes that we might just gloss over if we're reading them in our heads. And that's it. So a few things to keep in mind. One is just make sure you're using your past writing experiences to determine how much time you will need for each task. It's really hard to anticipate how long anything's going to take, but you have a whole semester's worth of experience working with these subjects. So just trust yourself in making those plans. Anticipate times when you will have trouble focusing and try to schedule breaks or personal tasks during those times. It's very similar advice to the first suggestion, because just like you know how long an essay takes you, you also know when you aren't really great at working. So for me in this schedule, that was Sunday when I'm doing all of this planning. I knew that I was going to need a little break then, and so I scheduled it. The other one, honestly, for me is Friday after those 2 exams. One could hypothetically go take 2 exams and then try to do something major after those with the essay writing, but I know that I'm going to be tired, I'm going to be exhausted, I'm not going to want to do anything. So I did schedule that proofreading session, but I didn't schedule any major revision because my brain is going to be exhausted. And then again, just also break large study blocks into a series of smaller tasks to keep you on track. That's why I broke that essay writing into first page, second page, because just having essay writing for several hours is just an invitation for procrastinators to not work on the smaller steps that make up that large block. So before we move into the final part of our webinar, we wanted to let you know about one final webinar we're having this semester, which is actually a webinar and a co-working session. So this is going to be Tuesday, December 7th from 4 to 5 p.m. Which is a reading day, and that is why we have scheduled it for that time. This is really going to be an opportunity for, if you are having trouble sitting down and starting to work, to come get some work done. This is really going to be an active working session where we want you to bring homework, bring finals, bring study materials, and we're going to work on setting intentional study goals. We're going to try out a few different study apps together as a group and complete several short time study sessions. So we'll be working on with a few different apps and a few different blocks for about an hour. So definitely bring your work and come study with us.
Thanks, Betsy. That's great. I really wish I had your calendar set up when I was writing all my papers, because those blocks are wonderful. But now it's your turn. You know, we want you to have some time to go through some of this process for your own finals and your own exams. So a couple things you could do now is write down your deadlines and exams, what you've got on your calendar, determine the timing of a study cycle for each assessment. You could also use this time to plan your study blocks based on a study cycle. And you could also use this time to prepare a review. So you could break down your study materials to see how you will use them during each study block. Of course, you don't have to stay here, but we did want to give you a chance to sit back and do a little bit of your own prep for your own exams. And just a reminder that if you do have any questions, you can certainly add them to the chat during this work period. I think we've got a little bit under 15 minutes maybe left. So Betsy and I will hang out here while you work. If you want to work, you can certainly stay if you like. And we will be monitoring the chat for those questions and do our best to answer them as they pop up. But thank you so much for coming, and best of luck as you approach your finals. And feel free to let us know if you have any questions.
Thank you all.